I'm not sure if you remember the name of the Nobel laureate Maury Glenn. Gellman. He's a Nobel Prize in physics from one of the best universities here in the United States, Caltech, California Tech, which, as long as I know, up to 10 years ago at least, they had the largest number of Nobel laureates, at least in the state. At the time, they had 42 Nobel laureates among their faculty and the researchers and all that. So he's one of them, and in physics. Keep in mind that it's in physics. Then he went trying to say that the first one who said it was Nietzsche, or Nietzsche, how you pronounce that, Nietzsche.
Yeah, Nietzsche. I think that's close enough. That
you can typify, not classify, but typify researcher, academic, etc., people in general, in three categories. We can use the word categories. The Apollonian, according to Nietzsche, okay, which are inclined to logic, analysis, there's a passionate weighting of evidence. And the Dionysians, we are basically oriented, not uniquely, but basically oriented by intuition, synthesis, as opposed but not contradictory, to analysis, and passion, as opposed to this passionated weighting of the evidence. Okay? So he said that he feels that he is in the category, if you can call it that way, of the Odyssean or Odysseans, which are the people who integrate the Apollonian and the Dionysian. Oh. He said that he feels like that way. I really recommend his book. It's a great book. And his book cannot be understandable by any high school student. And he's Nobel Prize in Physics. And he's talking about that. But he could do it that anyone can understand it. So you can imagine, I understood it, so.
Well, he was one of the co-founders of the Santa Fe Institute for the Study of Complex Systems.
The complex system, yeah, you're right. You're right. Thank you for reminding me that. Then, we have that metaphor that we used 23 years ago to describe our conference. And you cannot imagine how much we were mocked because of using this metaphor. So the more we were mocked, the more I said, I'm not going to change that. The more I was, the people who started to mocking was a political scientist in MIT. Not all MIT like that, but political scientists in MIT are something different. So if you have here in the conference something related to information system, forbid, computer science, they feel like everyone from all disciplines are invading their discipline. That's the problem. That was the problem for them in that moment. I don't know if it's still the problem that they feel that they are invaded in their discipline. So the way 23 years ago we described our conferences with this metaphor. So the metaphor I personally used, that was most mocked by them, was that this conference, metaphorically, and I said this metaphor, the word metaphor was said 23 years ago, right at the beginning, as a metaphor. So as a metaphor, I try to describe, to present our conferences as the corpus callosum between the right lobe and the left lobe of the brain. This is what we want here to do. Even if we fail, at least our purpose is that. And to be a corpus callosum. So to be a corpus callosum, you need the two kinds of people. You need the disciplinarians, you need the analytical people, but you also need people oriented by synthesis, by integration. So that's what we are trying to do.
And Nagib, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Purely your own idea. Are you happy with how that's working out?
Yes and no. Yes, because I met people like you, and I really mean that. You are not the only one, but you are an example of that allowed me to meet people like you. Okay? Like him, like, you know.
About everyone here.
But my estimate that my subjective estimate that after 23 years, we didn't achieve more than the 15–20% of what I thought 23 years ago that we will achieve. So this is why I told you yes and no.
And maybe we can ask the people here how they experience that.
That's a good question, yeah.
How do you experience
But they're going
that?
to be biased because the one who's talking is me. So they're going to be biased saying that it's okay, it's great. so I
Well, it's not like you get a failing grade if they don't agree with you, but you know.
I'm just kidding.
No, I remember.
So we synthesized both things because after we were so strongly attacked, after that, and I decided to pick the metaphor, I read that movie. So I was not the only one saying that. Joseph from Caltech, a physicist, Nobel laureate. So what I did as contratacting the mocking process, I started using this table. What we said and were mocked about, and what the Nobel laureate said, which is almost exactly but with different words. Any one of them is a context, provide the context, provide the why. The context of not of the what and the why, not the how, of interdisciplinary communication. So we started defining interdisciplinary communication with a Nobel Prize word, which at the same time are based on the philosopher Nietzsche. So that's the best definition I could find about interdisciplinary communication, because it has meaning, but at the same time it has respectability and reputation. It got both things at the same time, you see. So this is what we are looking, if possible, to have a multiple author short essay with regard what is interdisciplinary communication, why it's needed, why it's desirable for those of you who think that it's not needed, but think that it's desirable, and how it could be done. Especially the how, because we are making now 3 spin-offs, as I said in one of the plenary session, the conversational panels the first day of the conference. We are making 3 spin-offs from the IIS oriented to the purpose. So it's a kind that we are looking for the IIS to transcend itself before dying, because in some moment it's going to die. To keep the purpose on self-sustainable organization. 3 of them, the NON, that I stole this word from you, okay, a network of network, the Academy of International, the International Academy of Interdisciplinary Communication, and a publishing firm that will be open to its authors. So, in order to close the divide between publisher and authors, close a little bit this divide, because many people whine about the terrible thing that is being done in the publishing business. That they are using the money of the people, the effort of the scientist, the creativity of the scientist, etc., 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 to make money. Okay. When you're gonna stop whining and do something about it? Few months ago, I was to someone that sent me an article from the Guardian saying that, blaming the publisher. I said, don't blame the publisher. They are doing a very good job. The more truthful is this article, the more proof that they are doing a good job. What did we do in our university? Why, for example, the press, the MIT press, don't solve this problem instead of whining? Why the Harvard University don't help solve the problem instead of whining? Why in the university we still using the top journal as the publishing business defined the top journal? Why? Who's defining what are the top journal? The marketing of the publisher with the people in the library.
Nagib, I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I'll tell you, I think it's entirely a self-inflicted wound. At our university, we decided to get a list of top journals. Where did that list come from? That list came from the faculty. And it is the faculty, not the publishing interest.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Maybe in my English I said other thing around, but this is what I'm trying to say.
But it's not the marketing department of the publishing. It is literally the faculty who make these decisions.
Yeah, but as a consequence of the marketing that they are doing.
I don't believe that.
I believe that.
I need some evidence before I'd accept that.
Who decide that your proceeding go to Scopus or not? Who decide that?
That is decided by Scopus, but who puts a weight on Scopus. It's the faculty. It is the faculty who decide we're only going to look at journals in Thomson ISI Web of Science or whatever it's called.
Okay.
It's the governments who decide we're not going to give faculty any money unless they're in a certain series of journal indexes. It is entirely a self-inflicted wound.
Okay.
And I can say, and I will tell you, because in at least the College of Business, our research matters not at all to practice. You could literally burn all the research business schools do and it would have no impact on practice. So the only people who are impacted by our research are those of us who are faculty. And sadly, we have the best job in the world, so we're very, very selfish. And what we want to do is make it so our jobs are totally judged upon the research that we do, and not on actually having any practical impact. And it is entirely us. It's not beneficial to the students. Most faculty members do not give a minute worth of their research in an entire year to the students. It's not benefiting practice, but it means that, and I can only speak for business schools here, it means that a research institution, your full professors are making $300,000 a year for basically writing articles that other faculty members read. And it's such a beneficial, we're so self-interested that we want to perpetuate this system. And to keep it from getting out of hand, we put in barriers to those people who want to enter the system. But I would argue that it is entirely the faculty, and until we disrupt the faculty, we're not going to move forward. I would also say that if we really want interdisciplinary communication to happen, we're going to have to find another way of measuring the fitness of our output. Because if our interdisciplinary communication has the same amount of impact on practice as our disciplinary communication, then I don't see any advantage to doing interdisciplinary. We might as well it gets more confusing. So I think that fundamentally, as faculty members, we need to start looking at different measures of impact, such as impact on practice. And the problem is we're not used to measuring that type of thing. And indeed, the first thing that I would recommend if you want to encourage interdisciplinary communication would be to go out and find very clear examples where interdisciplinary communication solved problems that disciplinary communication has not. Because right now what we're mainly doing is we're mainly saying, well, theoretically, interdisciplinary communication is what we need to solve these complex problems. But until you actually show some examples of where it actually happened, then why on earth should anyone believe us?
You know, talking about impact, in one congress in Colombia, I was invited as a speaker, and I told the girl for 2 hours not to invite me. Because no one is going to agree with me. Because what he said. The conference was on impact factor. I don't believe on that. So I started the conference saying, impacting who? So we have to publish in order to impact some researcher working in Scandinavia or in Tanzania or in the United States. Is this the impact that we're looking for? Publish first and impact later? Or we should do it at least in Latin America the other way around. Impact first and publish your impact. Impact first. Solve some real life problem first. Make an impact. And then publish. It's a confusion with the means and the ends. What's the end? The impact is the end, but who you want to impact? So we are taking the thing on the contrary. I mean, we publish to impact. No! We have to publish the impact we did. It's the other way around.
Nagib, can I talk for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Can I comment? Okay. Because I find this really, really exciting. The whole thing, and I want to talk about impact, and I want to talk about something new that's happening. So I'm in education, and I'm a digital literacy professor. So I was approached, see this little device? It's a Narcan injector that you carry in your purse or your pocket. So I was approached by the health sciences department faculty at my university. And they said, was I aware of what was happening with the opioid epidemic and young people in Canada? And they wanted some way to reach young people, and would I help them? Well, I said I would help them, but it turned out that they made a tremendous impact on me. So so now they have just published the first graphic novel on what to do as the bystander when somebody goes down. And I don't know, in the United States, I don't know the statistics, but in Canada, deaths from opioid are surpassing deaths from accidents in cars. And it is closely becoming the #1 form of accidental death in Canada. So we developed together health sciences, education, a graphic novel. And then they said to me, our teaching device is going to be a simulation. Now, this is embarrassing, but I had just written a chapter on active learning for a European book. I hadn't even put simulation in it because in education, we don't use simulation. We have practice teaching and things like that, but we don't use simulation. So this is a true story. The health sciences people pulled me in to start observing their simulations. So they do it with nursing, with pharmacy students, with nursing assistants. And they bring all voluntary, the students come in, and the health sciences professors, and now me, we run simulations where the students come in to look at the graphic novel or look at videos, and all of a sudden, out in the hall, somebody goes down, and what's going to happen? It is the most exciting teaching I've done in my life because it's interdisciplinary, right? So I'll finish. I'm monopolizing.
I'm not going to pressure you,
but
would you?
One sentence.
Would you take the responsibility from all of us to write that in a short essay of 1,500 words?
Well, it sounds like next.
Because that's what we need, not just to take what's happening here to take it out.
So Nagib, one more sentence. On Friday, next Friday, they're going to have 22 students go down at once. And we're going to be at a conference of health professionals in the university. And so I wrote to them. So they said, Lorraine, this is it, next Friday, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, I have to push back. It's like War of the Worlds. Like, what if somebody takes a video and it goes viral? And they said, no, it's all managed. So, but you know what? It has turned out to be one of my greatest learning experiences is learning from health sciences. So anyway, I'm sorry. Do you want to pass this around? What is it? This is how you save a life. Someone goes down from an opioid overdose. You put this in their nostril and press the plunger, and you save their life. That's how it works. You can't hurt somebody with Narcan, but you can save a life with Narcan.
Is there any paper on that?
Oh, we're just starting.
You see what I
mean? We're just starting.
You should impact and publish, not publish to impact.
Oh, but
that's a good example.
One more thing. Okay, one more thing, sorry. In Canada, they have, for schools of medicine, they have top 10 simulations that to put trainees through. This one that we did, and I'm so excited, just made number 10 of the top 10. So it's going to be taught in every hospital in Canada. And it started from an interdisciplinary communication. Like, it's just so exciting. Do you want me to pass it around? Do you want to see? Yeah. You just carry, that's not a real one. It's just a demonstration that I use.
So if I drop now, you can say please.
Sorry, can't see. Sorry, it's not
Because of all the opioids you've been taking, yeah.
I know, this just kind of happened. I haven't had a chance to write it. It just made me talk.
So you see why we can call that corpus callosum?
Yes?
You see, that's an example. Corpus callosum. At least what the people that we are here, we learn about that, about the importance of interdisciplinary communication. So let's take that out.
I want to build on what Lorraine said actually, because in your simulation in our university, as part of the interprofessional collaboration committee, they have disaster simulations with actors that play the roles, and students from different programs have to act in front of this disaster simulation. So they have to live the experience, and they have first-hand emotions and reactions. So that was one of, and actually have students from nursing, med school, social work, I don't know, physiology, education. There's a very broad collaboration.
I need to clarify something here that maybe is clarified to all of you, but I need to do that because of some emails that I received in the last moment. And the difference between interdisciplinary research and interdisciplinary communication, because you can make disciplinary research and take it to an interdisciplinary audience. At the same time, you can have an interdisciplinary research, for example, some field in artificial intelligence, that the related field understand each other because they did the research, but I cannot understand it. So other disciplines not involved in the interdisciplinary research would not understand what they did. So not always an interdisciplinary research is oriented to interdisciplinary communication. And disciplinary research could be written or communicated in an interdisciplinary way. So they are not synonyms. They are not the same. They are not even analogous. They are different concepts. This is why we remove from one of the associations that we are trying to spin off, we remove the word research in order to avoid this confusion that I found in the last 2 months. People, when I asked for an additional paper for interdisciplinary research, people would send me, not all of them, of course, some of them, what they send me is interdisciplinary research that I cannot understand it because I'm not in their discipline. So if I am 75 years old and I've been through a bunch of disciplines starting in electrical engineering and then electronic engineering and then operational research, all the things that I went through, computer engineering, software engineering, if having been all my life in so many disciplines, I cannot understand them. Who's going to understand them? So it was not easy for me to separate for them the two concepts, because they kept telling me, hey, we needed 5 disciplines to do that. Yes, but I don't understand you. If I don't understand you, who's going to understand you? I mean, I'm 75 years old and cannot understand you. So I prefer to make this clarification just to separate both concepts. They have commonalities. This is why they communicate, because they intersect each other. So they have something in common. So you can communicate interdisciplinary research with interdisciplinary communication. But they are not the same. They intersect each other, but they are not the same.
Yeah. I'm gonna make an argument that what you're describing as interdisciplinary research, I would describe as multidisciplinary research, which is where essentially the disciplines work separately on different pieces of the problem, and it does not necessarily require they communicate with each other. For true interdisciplinary research, I think interdisciplinary communication is a prerequisite,
yes,
because you cannot separate out the communication. That's why I think that multidisciplinary is a better way of describing research, where you can break up the problem into pieces and you don't really have to
I told exactly that to the guy that insisted in the same paper. And he told me, how you can tell me that if I am the one who's doing all that? So if I am just the one, I communicated myself in several disciplines. So I am not a multidisciplinary team. I am just one person. He's right. But still, the interdisciplinary research, not just multidisciplinary research, is different to interdisciplinary communication. Still different.
But I would argue that there is no interdisciplinary research without interdisciplinary communication.
Of course, no way.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. It's a necessary condition.
Yeah, the necessary.
Of course.
I agree.
Of course. It's communication between the different disciplines that made the research, but not with the other discipline that they were not involved in the research. You see what I mean? There is an interdisciplinary communication, of course, but among the discipline involved in the research. How about her, or him, or me? You see what I mean?
But I think you're just confusing interdisciplinary communication with ineffective communication. You can have interdisciplinary research and communicate incredibly ineffectively, thereby making it impossible for anyone to understand.
No, what I'm trying to say is that interdisciplinary communication requires necessarily an additional step of creativeness to translate from disciplinary semiotic system to non-disciplinary semiotic system.
Well, now you're using words that I don't understand, like semiotics, so you're failing on the interdisciplinary. It's like
No. But are you saying?
Okay, let me give an example of what I'm saying. Let me give an example of what I'm saying. The example we gave the first day. Mathematics education in high school or in elementary school. Can you imagine mathematics education in high school or in elementary school with some mathematician just talking mathematics? He necessarily has to create analogies and metaphors so the kid would know what's that. So it's the translation from the mathematical syntaxis and semantic and pragmatic to a semiotic system, which is semantic syntaxis and pragmatic, that the kid understands. So if you have to do that, you need an extra creativity. And many professors that I met, for some reason, they don't want to make this extra effort. Someone told me, if I make this extra effort, it's not just I'm not gonna help in my promotion, but it's gonna go against my promotion. Because they're gonna say that I am, instead of being researchers, I am a journalist. So when he told me that, I said I understand, it's reasonable what you are saying. But let me ask you something. And this is why I would like to ask you. Why we, the scientists, no, I'm not scientist. Why scientists expect a journalist to understand them, to make the intellectual effort to understand them, but they don't make a similar intellectual effort to remove the intermediary? Why scientists need a scientific journalist? I mean, why I am expecting from you something that I'm not delivering? Why? Is there any reason why we are so lazy? And we are expect the journalists to be less lazy than us?
I'm going to disagree with you again.
Good.
Because ultimately, in order, for example, to understand calculus, you have to master algebra first. Because if you don't master algebra, your mind, which can only handle 4 or 5 things at once, is not going to be able to grasp the calculus concepts because it's still grappling with the unfamiliar algebra. You know, I took a graduate course in quantum mechanics, but if I were asked to try to explain quantum mechanics, I would quickly discover how limited my understanding of it is. In my discipline, one of the reasons we do not communicate effectively is if we actually communicated so people understand what we're studying, they'd think we were crazy for studying it. There are over 400 papers in my discipline which look at the question of, does the intention to use an information system normally precede the use of an information system? Literally, statistical tests, 400 of them. If we ever explained clearly what we were doing, they would think, why on earth are we paying these people to do it?
Have you read this book?
Yes, I have.
Okay, read it again. Have any one of you read the book of Finch of Capra about the Tao of physics? It's the frontier of physics that anyone understands. So he made the additional creative effort to be understood by non-physicists.
Is this in part knowing who your audience is?
Yes.
Yes. Because it depends on who you're speaking to.
Yes.
You have to put on your journalist hat, which
Yes.
a good scientist should have, and say, oh, I'm speaking to all of these different people, so I need to put it in a language and use examples that they can understand.
Yeah. I wanted to use a hyperbole to make myself so I talked about non-disciplinary communication in order to explain what we understand here by interdisciplinary communication. So I gave the example of non-disciplinary communication. You see what I mean? This is why I used the metaphor of journalism.
But basically, the two
But you are
examples
completely right.
The two examples you gave were mathematics and physics, and both of those are disciplines. I would argue you're talking about effective communication versus ineffective communication.
Okay.
And effective communication means understanding your audience.
Yes. So let's say that the most elemental thing in an interdisciplinary communication is to respect the pragmatic level of this semiotic system which is to be understood by other disciplines. I mean, if I have to use you all, is to be effective communicating yourself with other disciplines.
But not just other disciplines, just other people. We don't need to think of the world in terms of disciplines. Most people don't think in terms of disciplines.
Well, once I was told that this is not interdisciplinary, this is non-disciplinary. So I said, what's wrong with that?
Nothing.
So people started, jumping around me that until I found one guy from MIT that was plenary speaker here, you met him, that he was a lover of non-disciplinary communication and non-disciplinary knowledge, and he insisted on that. Why knowledge got to be disciplinary, he said. No one could answer that. No one could answer that. Why got to be disciplinary? Any knowledge. I mean, their knowledge, he said, that is disciplinary because a product of discipline, of following a given method, for using pre-given, symbols, syntaxis, and semantic. And other thing is to use another semantic, syntactic, and pragmatic. The pragmatic is how you affect the user, the audience. That's the pragmatic level. So effectiveness is related to the pragmatic level.
So then he was saying at the pragmatic level, we're looking at being non-disciplinary to be able to communicate with everyone to take away the barriers.
That's what he would say.
That's what he was arguing.
Yeah.
So then what do you think about that?
I told him at the moment, all non-disciplinary communication is interdisciplinary communication, but not necessarily all interdisciplinary communication is non-disciplinary communication. That depends on the discipline you want to reach. Because when you reach all the disciplines, you are in a non-disciplinary communication. So the non-disciplinary communication is a special point, an extreme point of interdisciplinary communication. When everyone would understand you. Any discipline, but at the same time, any non-discipline thinking.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't get that.
Good thing!
But then for example, my doctor, when I hear him talking to his colleagues, they speak in a language that I don't really understand.
All right.
But if they were going to make
Yes.
it so I understood it, I wonder if they would be able to actually cure me because they couldn't talk among themselves in their discipline.
Yes, of course.
So,
There is no way to have interdisciplinary communication without disciplines by definition. Because how am I going to relate something that doesn't exist? If I'm going to relate disciplines, I need the existence of the disciplines. I mean, it's so evident. This is what we can call perogrullo in Spanish. In Latin it's perogrullo. It's so evident that you don't have to say it. So, you need multiple disciplines in order to be able to relate them in an interdisciplinary communication. So you have to have multiple disciplines. So you need disciplinary sort. You need the discipline. The discipline is a necessary condition for the evolution of science. There is no doubt about that. Because the reality is too complex and our brain cannot achieve, So you need the disciplines. It's necessary condition. My point is that it's not sufficient. You see what I mean? Disciplines are necessary for the advancement of science. But it's not sufficient because somehow, someone, some group got to integrate that to solve real-life problem, because real-life problem, there is no one-to-one relationship with disciplines. It's a relationship much to one, not one-to-one.
When we are doing interdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary communication is essential. You cannot do it without that. You have to find ways to understand each other. Now, when it comes to communicate findings, you have to understand your audience. If your audience is within the discipline, then you're going to use the jargon of your discipline to communicate those findings. If you go for a broader audience, then you're going to use a language that will appeal to a broader audience, of course, for other disciplines. And then it comes an audience like practice, the people, the professionals that work with real life problems. And then you have to take your findings to make appeal to them, to vulgarize them and give to the practice. They don't always need all the fancy words that we use in our articles, because we want to appeal with I don't know what impact factor journal, but they need things that are clear, pragmatic, ways to do. They don't have always time to read all the papers to read. So we understand our audience, I think, and then can be transdisciplinary.
Yes, and taking your example, they have interdisciplinary communication when your doctor talk with each other, but they have to make.
Well, they talk to the patient.
Yes, it's another audience, as he said. You see, so he has to change. So he has to translate. But translation has a special meaning here. It's a translation between two different semiotic systems. The disciplinary semiotic system and the non-disciplinary one, because you know nothing about medicine.
So in reality, to be an effective communicator, a science communicator, you actually need to be bilingual. You need to play with seriously.
Trilingual, multilingual.
Multilingual, bilingual, you need to be able.
You see why we made an effort to bring linguists to our conference? Because in their hand is part of the solution to teach us. That the effort that we made, because psychologically and financially a disaster, they didn't come to our conference. So that was the reason. I mean, there was one guy from, I was surprised because I didn't know that in his country, from Africa, they had about 75 or something like this languages, different languages. So they had a huge problem educating the people. So his problem is how to relate different languages among themselves. And I loved what they were doing. Not because what they achieved, I didn't even care about that, but about how they are trying to do it. Because the how could be used for interdisciplinary communication, because we are talking about different languages. They are talking different natural languages. Here we are talking about different disciplinary languages. But we are talking our languages. That doesn't mean that discipline is just language, it's also culture, which is another word. You know, the culture, which is even more than the language. So how we deal with these walls around the silos, the academic silos, how you deal with that? So the problem is not just language. So this is why in several conferences, at least in 3, we tried something and we failed. With the people of the 2 plenary speakers of this morning, that they are working on multicultural communication and intercultural communication, the people from UCF. I told them what they are doing could be completely applicable to interdisciplinary communication, because they are talking about national or tribe culture, and we are talking here about academic tribe cultures. So we can apply that here and vice versa. So we can learn from each other. I am sure that we are going to learn from them more than they're going to learn from us. And it's so important with Omplegi, for example. I had about 2 hours of interchange of reasoning. Why multiculturalism? All my life I said it's not gonna work. I am from 3 different cultures. It's not gonna work, the multiculturalism in Europe. The only way to work is the way they did it in the United States. The problem with multiculturalism, in my opinion, because I am not an expert on that, just an opinion, need intercultural communication. So it's not, as long as you are multicultural, you're going to have problems. The same problem that we are having with multidisciplines. You're never going to solve the problem of multiculturalism in Europe if you don't try intercultural communication. They cannot live with each other without communicating. And by definition, communication, you need something in common. If I have nothing in common with you, how the hell am I going to communicate with you? So you have to find intersections between the cultures in order to base your narrative in this intersection, because this intersection is what's going to communicate you. If you base your communication with other cultures in what is not common to the culture, everyone is going to get frustrated. So you need to find what's the common thing here, and that takes us to philosophy. The common thing is what we are as human beings. That's the common thing. That's what we have in common. The different culture that we are human beings. So you have to go to psychology, you have to go to philosophy, in order to understand the nature of the human being, because this is what we have in common, different cultures. And we have to get in what is common to us to communicate by definition of communication. So in communication, you use what you have in common in order to share what is not common. And this applies to cultures, and this applies to disciplines. We have to use what's common in order to share what is not common. You see what I mean? And this is, if you don't do that, I don't know how we can do interdisciplinary communication. So one of the things that we have in common, the discipline, is natural language. But this is one of the things that we have in common. Another thing that we might have in common, purpose of education. But the problem here is, my question this morning, how many professors in higher education have any idea what education is? How many of them ask, what's education? Even asked, what's that? What's that? How many? So this is the estimate I asked this morning. No one wanted to answer, so I answered my own question. In my experience, subjective experience, no more than the 20%.
I think that, one of the things that it might be interesting to have people share is we've already got one good example of an interdisciplinary collaboration and research that led to effective communication. I'm not going to wander down that rabbit hole again,
but remember that the effectiveness depends on the purpose of the communication.
Well, that's absolutely
so what
correct.
is effective for you maybe is not effective for him.
Well, that's the whole point. It looks like they're actually having an impact. It is diffusing, it is spreading. And that, to my mind, is an evidence of high fitness communication. So I'll use high fitness communication. But I'd be interested in getting other examples from the group about where they have found circumstances that have led to effective communications between disciplines. I've got an example from my own program, our Doctor of Business Administration program, which when we form dissertation committees, we basically have 4 candidates who get together and find there's some commonality, and it could be a weird commonality. It might be research method, it might be the industry they're looking at, it might be that they all want to write a book. And then what we do is we assign faculty members to the committees. Now, normally these faculty members come from different departments and even different colleges because they resonate with the ideas of the students in different ways. One of the things that we're finding is when they're given a concrete task to do, these faculty members are discovering that research means different things to people in different departments, and they end up expanding their view of what constitutes research because they have a concrete task to accomplish, which is helping the candidate with his or her research problem. And the thing that I think encourages interdisciplinary communication in that case is a shared task, and the fact that they're forced to sit down for 4 hours every month to discuss that and come to conclusions. And one of the things that has surprised me, for example, is finance faculty turn out to be some of the most sensitive people in terms of some of these human resource type tasks. For them, it's a really interesting experience because they never get to do that type of research within their own discipline. Their discipline, their idea of research in the discipline is going through tapes of stock prices and trying to find unusual statistical predictors. But when faced with a common problem and some encouragement from other departments or colleges, we have people from psychology. We actually had the dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences sitting in on one of our committees, and he is he's a leading figure in the communications industry. That provided an interesting way of stimulating it, and it wasn't that we were doing interdisciplinary communication for the sake of interdisciplinary communication, because I think that's a non-starter. The incentives are not there. It's interdisciplinary communication because you've got a concrete problem to solve, and that's exactly like the Naxalone example that we just had.
I disagree. The problem to solve is one way that motivates people to sit around and find a solution from different disciplines. But another one is meta-education, self-education. So I can sit down with her, having felt all my life in all the attempts I did with arts. I can sit with her and try to learn something because I felt in everything. So 2 persons, this is why I added to this slide what is here. Not just conferences, any event, even between 2 people. If I love myself, or this is what always I need to really love myself, I would love to know what I don't know. So let me find someone not from my discipline, because let me find someone to learn from other discipline, to enhance my vision of my life. So as professor, I say, I cannot understand a human being that would not love himself through learning. It's a matter of self-love. So how can I imagine a professor that he's saying that he's educating people, but he wouldn't care about educating himself? Even if he was not professor, just loving himself, he should be doing that. So, the problem is to find another person loving herself. So we can learn from each other. So, we need just two persons to start with the organization that we are trying to start. This network of network. Just start two persons anywhere. When you go to university, try to get a meeting not with your co-author, but with someone else. And try to understand, to make the effort to understand what he's saying, what she's saying, and vice versa. And you are already making interdisciplinary communication. The motor is your self-love. Because if you don't want, if you stop learning, where is your self-love?
No, self-respect.
Self-respect. The dignity of human being. No matter how you call it, I call it love because I'm Catholic.
And self-care. And self-care.
So I call it self-love. I mean, Christ said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. He didn't say, love yourself as you love your neighbor. So, loving oneself is something that is given. They don't to be mandated. It's something given to us at the moment that we are born. Explicitly or implicitly. When managing it or bad managing it, we love ourselves.
Well, Nagib, I have a proposal sitting here in this room now. I do. We take a pad, we put our name, we put an email address, we put an area of research we may be interested in pursuing, and maybe there's someone else in this room now who's interested enough to be here that we could collaborate with.
We can continue that later, as she's saying. This is a great idea. Let us at least try it. I prefer to try it and fail than to not try it. Let's try it. Because if we can succeed on this idea, it's a great idea. The only problem that I see on this idea, you know what? It's easier for her to find another person from other discipline to share with her knowledge than to find all of us accepting that. Let me explain myself. Since I was young, I was on that one. Right after I learned operational research and I found out that this can be applied to any discipline. I started applying it to different disciplines. So I started having the sense of interdisciplinary communication because operational research relates discipline because it can be applied to everything. So I got in love about 1 or 2 years after the PhD. I was really in love with interdisciplinary communication. So I attempted as a seminar in our department. 1 year of seminars. Every one went over there to eat the food my wife was doing. The effectiveness was zero. So I started believing that bottom up is better than top down. But let's try both of them because they are cybernetic loops between top down and bottom up. Let's do what you are saying, which I would like to do it, but let each one of you do it by a friend, with a wife, you know, with a date, go out with a dating from other disciplines. So you can have a good time learning new things. I'm just giving you an extreme examples to. So let's do both things. Let's do what you are saying, and just in case that everyone now love the idea that after that no one is going to answer my email, just in case, let each person to make a commitment with himself or herself that's going to have an informal chat with someone in his university or her university from other disciplines. Let's start bottom up as long as possible, but also let's do what you are doing, you are saying. Especially if you are in love with what you are saying, then you have to work a lot to make people do that. So if you can help on that, you're not going to have oxygen to get around my house.
Well, you can only ask. There may be somebody sitting out there who's fascinated and wants to pursue it.
Let me ask a question. What is our pursuit of doing? Do we want to understand the world? Do we want to find a way to handle the complexity? Because we are on a conference on complexity. And I think the disciplines, really, we have no idea if this number of disciplines is limited, because we do not know the nature. We have to handle this, and we have to try a way. And the only way, in my opinion, is that we build something like boxes, and we call those boxes disciplines. Because we need an order, we need the structure in our brain to handle the complexity of the world. Even maybe if you want to call that the human beings and the nature, and we have no idea if this is limited. And so we defined disciplines, and we focused on one of those disciplines to be maybe experts in that. And so my question is, what do we want to do when we intercommunicate? Do we just link some disciplines together, or do we want to find a way to handle the complexity? And so I think everybody of us here in this room has some points of interest. And I love the idea to discuss with experts about orchestra and music and whatever. But this is not the point for all. It is only the point for some people. And I think we have to think about what is better to interdisciplinary communication than only the discussion inside the discipline. I think we have to think about the complexity and what is our pursuit of doing. It is understanding the world, the human being, the nature.
Okay.
I think I'm helpless. Sorry to
I
say
suppose that you heard about academic incest.
Yeah, of course.
The way it's defined, academic incest is when you start teaching in the same university that you was graduated. Another way to define it, is if you get your bachelor, your master, and your PhD in the same university. Okay. Let's suppose we accept that. So I will call it intra-university academic incest. One of the first conferences we had here, the first day, I showed the intellectual monsters that interdisciplinary incest can produce. Two of them were, and still are Nobel Prizes, so they were not stupid. One of them was, all historian books was the basis of race lynching, in which the Nazi regime was based. And they had their priority. First, the Jews, then the Arabs, then the people from Africa. Extermination of all what this guy, a scientist, called the moral beast. So, you're going to tell me that this is not an intellectual monster? That was the product, not in my world, but in the world of the book I was reading at that moment. I don't have the reference here right now. I can give it to you in any moment. That was because he was in his discipline not seeing any other discipline. So he called it, the author, disciplinary inbreeding. I prefer to call it with the harsher word, incest, which means the same thing but is harsher. Because intra-university incest would not produce these intellectual monsters as being interdisciplinary. So, if you love yourself, you try to avoid being an intellectual monster or not. So this is another reason. I'm not removing the other reason. I'm just adding more reasons to why it's not just desirable, but it should be necessary to be a good disciplinarian. Which is a good disciplinarian? Who knows a little bit about other disciplines. Because if not, he's taking the risk of being, in interdisciplinary incest. And I wish to have papers going against about what I'm saying. Because in this way we will have a controversy. And the controversy between people that respect each other is a learning process. Because it takes to dialogue, not necessarily to debate. Debate are destructive, dialogues are constructive. So, what I can learn from you if you agree with me with everything? What I can get from you if you agree with me with anything is, is psychological pleasure. He agree with me and I expect him, and he agree with me, that's good. He's a Nobel Prize and agree with me, it feels so good, you see. But if I respect him and he disagree with me, because of love of myself, I have to think, to reflect, why a person like him does not agree with me. So that makes me have reflection. And that's the only way I know about self-education, to have reflections. So his disagreement is a source of my learning. And that could happen between different disciplines, that we disagree with each other because we have different perspectives. So it's normal that different disciplines, people from different disciplines would not agree with each other.
So if you're looking for disagreement, then you're going to have a lot of learning with this. First off, let me preface this, that I am certainly a product of intra-university incest because I did my undergraduate at Harvard, my master's at Harvard, and my doctorate at Harvard. And I don't fully subscribe to the narcissist view of interdisciplinary learning. I'm more of a problem-based person. But I would also like to suggest, and this was stated very explicitly when I went back for a doctoral reunion at Harvard, is the noble-sounding reason that universities will not hire their own PhD students is because we're afraid of incest. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is that if you hire your own PhD students, then every other university is going to assume that you kept the best for yourself and that they're getting second best. And so at the Harvard reunion, they were telling me what they recommend to their PhD students is they get another job for 3 years at another university and then come back to Harvard. This is why I would never recommend going to Harvard for ethics training. As academics, we like to put ourselves up on a pedestal, but we got to be a little careful with that. I'm also very suspicious of any solution that, or any approach to a problem that involves academics talking to each other a lot for the sake of talking to each other or for the sake of self-gratification. Because I have been on too many academic committees that have spent years discussing things that could have been dispensed in minutes because we so much like to hear ourselves talk. And that is the reason that I recommend the problem-focused approach, where you communicate in an interdisciplinary way in order to solve specific problems, because that not only forces interdisciplinary communication, but what it also does is it sets up informing channels that will persist beyond the original problem, so the next time you encounter a problem that requires an interdisciplinary approach, you already have informing channels that are in place. Now, just a quick notification, I am the president of the Informing Science Institute, so everything I say is likely to have either complexity or informing channels in it. You can't necessarily trust what I'm saying. But
no, I trust what you are saying, and I was and I am still in love with interdisciplinary communication through problem solving, and you know that. But what I'm trying to say is there is another way, or another kind of problem. Your personal problem of loving yourself, which means you want to have to be in the process of self-learning. So this is another problem. So I'm not against that. All my life I was focused on what he's saying. Actually, the only thing that now the Chavismo in Venezuela couldn't destroy is a foundation of research and development which objective was to link industry and academy in order to have interdisciplinary communication focusing on industrial problems. So this is the only institution in the university that was not destroyed by this regime. You know why? Not because they are solving industry problems. They are doing that. But the regime would not care about, So it's because the professors working on that foundation are making 10 times more money than what their salary. So who can go against that? So even the enemy of the foundation, it was designed, 30 years ago. Now they are working on it. So this is the best way to sustain something, is to go to the most basic things, which is love for oneself.
I thought it was love for money that you were
Which
fits my model of coming from a business school.
In their case, it's love for themselves and their parents, because they cannot live with their salary. So it's love for their kids and for themselves. As a consequence of that, they need money. But maybe some of them want the money because of the money. Okay, you're right.
I found faculty members are frequently motivated by money.
So,
that way to business.
So it's good to start at least with 2 persons. If someone is so horrible that cannot find another person, all what he has to do is to read anything that is not his discipline. That's it. That's it. What I'm trying to mean, let us all of us stop whining like I am doing now. I'm whining. Let's do something. Let's start alone, so we cannot blame any other because I couldn't start. Let's start alone. And then try, if I am effective, if you are effective, you try to expand that to the people that you love. And then if they are effective, they would try to expand that to the people they love. And then you did something before dying. Something you did. And I mentioned the word dying because I got a few years more to live. So, so I was talking about myself, not about you.
I wanted to come back to what Professor Gill said about effective communication. And I think it is important not only to be able to give a message effectively, but also to practice some listening skills. We have to be able to listen to other people's ideas, to be open to other people's ideas, however different, and to be able to negotiate and compromise to find the middle ground when they are doing interdisciplinary communication. So if we are able to that, we practice some self-respect, but respect for the other. And when we are looking to the obstacles or to what does the collaboration better, the research says when people have good experience when collaborating with others, it is more likely to do it again. If they find effective communication, we'll do it again. But if that wasn't a good experience, they didn't find they were effective, they will not repeat the experience.
Let me say something that I usually always try not to forget to the young people. Please don't do what I'm recommending. No, I really mean that. Because you might lose your promotion. So you have to be responsible with yourself, with your family, and you have to follow the rules. If the rules are wrong, they are disciplinary rules, you have to follow them, you have to publish in the journal they want. So at your age, just be aware. But don't follow what I'm saying. Okay? Be aware and take it as a hobby. To read anything outside of your discipline. To play piano. Try to do it. To paint. To read about quantum mechanics if you are not in this discipline. There is a lot of books of quantum mechanics that anyone can understand. Read it. Read anything that has to do nothing with your discipline in your free time. But don't follow what we are saying here in your career. Because we will be hurting you. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Any other comment or question? You are working on your list?
Okay, so two things happened here. The sheet of paper came around, people created a list, but I was sitting here creating an online Google form.
Great.
And I've got a bit.ly address for it, so it's not a form this long, it's very short, bit.ly/IIS 2019, and you can enter your information.
So let's start
here.
Hey, she's escaping. I'm not gonna let you
I
escape.
never did a Google form before.
I
did it right here.
Let's start the first node of the network of network with you.
I already entered my information there. I already did it. So
manage the network.
Okay, it's bit.ly/IIS 2019. You can enter it even on your phone.
I just tried it and I got in, so.
And it works. It's to put your name, your email, your topics for research. bit.ly, bit.ly/IIS 2019.
You see?
And that way, if there's any typos here, we can't read the writing, it'll be on the Google form.
Can you repeat the numbers after the slash?
Sure. It's just IIS 2019.
You know what? The first day of the conference, Tuesday, they started two persons. Two persons.
2019.
Now she's going to a network. You remember the first day that you started that with just another person with Suzanne. Remember you started with Suzanne. In different disciplines to interact with each other. Now in 3 days she went from one person to a network of persons.
IIS forwards bit.ly.
This is what we're looking for. I mean, to make, as I told you, to make some spin-off, self-governed spin-off, in order to maintain the purpose, because I don't see reason to maintain this array. At least let's see if we can keep the purpose of it. So, Eli, I told him that he was really lucky when you are younger than he, continue. Now you have to find someone younger than you to continue.
So I'm not.
Really?
Yeah.
So I can be your father.
Yeah. You'd have to be pretty young.
I just discovered that I can be his father. From the biological point of view, because he told me that the difference between his age and the one who founded Informing Science is just 6 years. That was a surprise for me.
It's coming. It's all uppercase. And the 0 is a 0. It's not a no.
So we started with a node of 2 people, now you have a network now.
We've already moved in.
Okay, you will have that information?
I'll make sure it's all together.
Okay, as soon as you are sure, can you give me that? As soon as you are sure that all of that, you have that on your file. I can make a copy, I suppose.
I can ask them if they can ask them.
Yeah, because I am lately.
All right.
I'm forgetting everything. Hey, why we don't start another network at the Latin American level? start at least 2 persons, as they started, 2 persons. A network on interdisciplinary communication at your university, and then you can expand to other university and end up, you know, in a Latin American network. So the founders are usually the people who care. You know, this is why I prefer not to be the founder. Not to start.
Why? What happened? What did I do?
You're the founder. And the
You
coordinator.
just are getting your baby. So as long as it's your baby, you're gonna care for it. So let's do what she's doing, and then you have the baby that you have to care for her.
And if anyone is
And then
interested in website,
I can't take the risk not to care for it because it's not my baby.
did you put that in your interest?
It's got to be your baby. You care for it,
Huh?
not my baby.
Did you put websites in there? Website development? Anyone interested in website development? I need some good people in website development.
I'm looking there for.
No, I understand.
The network.
You need something is doing
And,
Interested in website development.
designing.
People could do design, like take an old website and give it a build.
resources, sustainable.
That could be weird. Yeah. Doesn't have to be tattoo.
Oh, it's because you put like technical person.
Oh, because I need that too.
At 3 p.m. So that summarizes what we've been talking about disciplinary research and interdisciplinary communication as related necessarily to each other in the cybernetic group. You need disciplinary research. This is a must. Because if you don't have disciplinary research, you don't have the necessary condition for the advancement of science. So you need that. And we don't have to promote that because that is already being promoted by the university authorities asking you to do cybernetic disciplinary research. So this is something that we don't have to care about because the leaders of the academic world are caring about that, which is a necessary condition for interdisciplinary communication. What is lacking is the sufficient condition for the advancement of science as a larger and larger and larger integrated whole, as an integrative process.
Oh my God.
This can be achieved by interdisciplinary research, but not just by interdisciplinary research. We need the interdisciplinary research, but not just interdisciplinary research. We need to have the cybernetic loop between both of them. So we cannot have interdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary communication in the vacuum. So this is necessary for that. And this is provide the input for that in order to advance science in the direction of human beings. This can advance science by itself, but in a fragmented way, which doesn't serve the human being needs. You have to relate things because real life problems are almost never solved by one discipline. So it's a matter not to confuse necessary condition with sufficient condition. Disciplinary research is necessary for the advancement of science and for the advancement of our life and for improving our life. No question about that. And this has been very well done by academics. The problem is that the necessary condition is not sufficient one. You need that, but you need also to relate them. And if you do that in a cybernetic way, it's better, because negative feedback would help to co-regulate. This would regulate this, and this would regulate this with negative feedback. And with positive feedback, you can have emergent properties and synergy between them. So, as long as we care about these two kinds of feedback between them, we will have disciplinary research regulating interdisciplinary communication in order to keep it scientific, and vice versa, co-regulation. This means that it's not this that is co-regulating this, or this is co-regulating this. There is a co-regulation. Let me give you an example. The thermostat is the example that is in all the books about what this control is. So I'm going to ask you something. What the thermostat control? What the thermostat control? Temperature of the environment. Okay. But the temperature of the environment is not controlling the thermostat. Who's controlling the thermostat?
The user? You mean someone trying to dial? Like
Yeah.
Homeowner?
Yeah, but why the homeowner is doing that? So, the thermostat controls the environment, but the environment controls the thermostat.
Well, it's also, the thermostat is monitoring the environment to control its behavior. So, because it's actually not controlling things at all. It's controlling
the air conditioning.
The air conditioning.
So all control have another implicit control. This is when you talk about regulation, you are always talking about co-regulation. Because the thermostat controls the environment, but the thermostat behaves as according to the environment changes. So who is controlling who? So it's better to talk always about co-regulation, not just regulation. Co-control, not just control. Because there is always an explicit control and an implicit control. So this is why we use always the word co-regulation via negative feedback. And positive feedback, as you know, could be additive, could be multiplicative, etc., etc. When it is multiplicative, it's grow like have an exponential growth. When it's additive, it has a linear growth. So because this positive feedback, this growth could destroy and as an emergent property, but it could produce synergy as an emergent property. For example, in Venezuela, the positive feedback destroyed the country. In the capitalistic system, the positive feedback produces wealth. So in my opinion, I'm not a political scientist, it's just an opinion. Socialism is needed capitalism needs socialism as long as socialism is anonymous, is handled by honest people. This is what I said, as long as.
Yes.
You see, because capitalism is a positive. It's a positive feedback what you got in capitalism. So this is why it's great growth and growth and growth and growth. But this growth cannot be exponential forever because it could destroy. So from exponential you have to make it S. And you do that with regulating capitalism. So socialism is, I'm not socialist, okay? I have been, no, from the political point of view, I've been all my life anti-socialist, but I'm talking here now as cyber-statistician, okay? Socialism, let's say hopefully, okay? Regulate capitalism if it is managed by honest people like Finland, like Sweden. You see what I mean? But if it is in the hand of dishonest people, so it can destroy what capitalism created. Can destroy it because it could get transformed not in a regulative mechanism, but in a parasite of the society. So, as happened with any parasite, it ends up destroying in himself after destroying the body which is being parasite. That has happened with socialism. What's happening in Cuba? They were parasite first with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union formed, and they started being parasite of the Venezuelan oil. And they did it in such a bad way that they destroyed the country. So now they cannot parasite Venezuela anymore because the production of oil in Venezuela went to the fourth part of what it was. So this is a regulation that went out of control. So I'm not talking about this kind of regulation here. But about both of them co-regulating each other, which is what's happening. The only thing is good to have that explicit instead of implicit up to a present, because as long as you have it explicit, you can accelerate it. This, of course, as you know, what produces is analogical thinking, which is the necessary input of logical thinking.
So I'd like to question or at least qualify an assumption you made, because you said we need both disciplinary research and interdisciplinary communication. And I think that there are distinct limits to disciplinary research.
Yes.
I think in fields, the classic sciences, where you've got principles such as superposition, which allow you to break up problems into much smaller problems, it's very natural and appropriate for disciplines to solve, because as the small problems get more and more complicated, you need to focus them. In the areas, however, where what we're studying are complex systems, breaking these systems up does not necessarily improve our understanding of them. And disciplinary thinking has proven in many cases to be extremely counterproductive.
Yes.
And we're seeing this you know, in a lot of fields now where they're recreating original experiments and they're discovering that these things don't replicate at all what was taken as solved science. This recently happened in psychology, is now much, much more questionable. You look at the field of economics, and every guiding principle of economics has been violated. You look at business, and our research is entirely ignored by practice. Guess what? Practice is very motivated by money. If they felt that they could do better by following our research, they would be huge consumers of it. What these, you know, it's very difficult to figure out what the societal benefits of political science have been. All of these fields are dealing with complex systems, and they're trying to break them down into component pieces and study the components separately. And complex systems do not work well that way. That's not the way they behave. So I would argue that to say disciplinary research is a necessary condition really depends on the type of problem that you're solving. In some cases, it may be counterproductive and maybe what we need to do.
What you did now, what he did now is the best example of what I tried to say when I said interdisciplinary communication regulates disciplinary research. It's the best example. So both of them regulate each other via cybernetic loops. And this is happening. The best proof that it's happening is what he said. So it's happening implicitly. But if you make that explicit, you can accelerate it for a more harmonic development. So my personal purpose here, and I would say personal, subjective, is to generate some awareness about not the necessity, but that it's desirable to have these cybernetic loops that are implicit to make them explicit. Can I prove that? No. Can I prove what I said? No. But I think, I believe, it's not knowledge, it's belief. So it's not a justified belief, it's just a belief. That if we make that explicit, making this implicit thing that is happening now, and he was the best example, if we make them explicit, this loop would accelerate and would regulate better each other. What my opinion is based in research? No. It's based in experience. For example, in information systems. The more explicit I made this thing, the more effective and efficient was the development of the information system according to the requirement of the user. The more explicit and the more reiterative via incremental planning, an increment of an average of 1 week each week. That was called later agile development, Scrum. So all that make explicit what has been implicit in the old waterfall model. Because in the waterfall model you discover that you were wrong in the record and the requirement, the way you understood that, you discover that when the system is finished. But if you make all that explicit, you can notice it in the first week. If not, in the first month. And all of us know, well, not all of us, it's a statistic. For example, at least the people in software engineering know that the most costly errors are the requirement phase, not the programming phase. This is the less costly. So in order to identify your error in the analysis and the requirement and all that, the sooner you can identify them, the better. And in my experience, sooner meant to be aware about that, to have it in your planning, to have it explicit, not implicit. Because in the waterfall model was implicit. But in agile programming, it's explicit. And this is why each week review. In order to have these feedback loops, each week, not at the final of the project. To be able to do that, you have to have that explicit. So, my belief is based on experience, not in knowledge. Okay? It's the experience I had, and limited experience in information system. Maybe what I'm saying, it doesn't apply to other disciplines, you see. So this is why I learned that it's just a subjective thing. Unbelievable! Can you believe that? That I made less slide than needed.
Yeah, I know.
Can you believe that? I mean, I deserve a plate.
Yeah, that's right. You do indeed deserve a plaque.
I did it.
You can have a plate as well, but I don't know what that is.
That's costly. It's high cost.
Yeah.
The plaque is cheaper.
Yeah.
So, how about people in Latin America start what Risa started? Let's try it. Let's try it in one university, in one department. And as long as you are successful, you can expand. So you can have it in one department, in another department, in one university, between two peoples. So this is the reason why it's network of networks. So each one of these networks will be related to other networks in a meta-network. Let's try it. At least if you're not going to try it, that's, you know, what's going to happen if you're not going to try it? You're going to lower the frequency of whining. That's mean you would be accepting things as they are. Because it's easy, you know, to blame the president of the university, the promotional system. All of us blame the promotional system. Anyone did anything in order to solve the problem? Well, the usual answer is what we can do. Well, at least you can read another book that has nothing to do with your discipline. At least you can do that, or no?
I expressed my opinions in a forceful way in my department, and I got rewarded. I've never had to serve on the promotion and tenure committee. Because they're too afraid of what I would do. They're placed on that committee. You have no idea how many hours of time that has saved me.
I mean, there is so many things that no one can understand. I cannot understand. No one can give me an answer. Let me try one question. Why, I think in the first day I did this question. Why for a PhD student, he's allowed to select the member of his committee. And an author, he got graduated, his PhD, then he's going to start publishing, then he's not allowed to select some of the reviewers of the paper that he submitted. Can anyone give me an explanation of that?
We want them to graduate. You know, if we had hostile committee members, there would not be anyone who would actually ever graduate, because there has virtually never been a dissertation that was good enough so that it would satisfy hostile faculty members. That applies to papers as well. As it is, when you submit to a journal, it's a crapshoot. Basically, if you happen to get, the 1 in 64 chance of getting 3 positive reviewers, your paper will get accepted. And if you have one of the negative ones, it won't. And
so now give me an academic argument.
Why? Because I don't think it's an academic problem.
Oh,
I
okay.
recognize this.
Okay.
I recognize this.
Okay, that's it. It is an academic problem when his paper is not selected by people who would not understand what he's doing.
If you look at one of the principal management journals, the Administrative Science Quarterly, they basically did a study of correlations between reviewers. And what they concluded was that they were rejecting more papers that should have been accepted than otherwise would have been the case, and they were accepting more papers that should have been rejected than would have been the case through, it was essentially random chance. I mean, the reviewer correlation was 0.2, which is a very, very low correlation. And this is over 1,000 articles that they studied. So what it says is there's a tremendous amount of randomness in the process.
Yes.
And, if we didn't like randomness, Las Vegas wouldn't exist, and we'd all be
Let me add to that what he's saying, that the 92 or 92% of the largest scientific society in the United States, according to Paul, they agree with him. And they say peer reviewing is not working. Peer reviewing is a trash. Peer reviewing such and such and such. So it's the 92% of the largest scientific society of the United States. That study, that poll, that article, I don't know how to call it, was about 15 years ago. So the grand question I have, I never got an answer. Why no one is doing anything about that?
We're whining about it.
Why?
And because the people who are in charge of the system are the ones who benefited from the system, and so we whine about it. That's the.
I mean, shouldn't we apply the scientific method? Not we, but I'm not scientist. Okay, I'm engineer. But shouldn't we apply the scientific method, or at least engineering design for the methodology? Okay. To try at least to correct this problem. To try at least to improve that problem. To lower the number from 22%, 92%, let's say to 89%.
Well, I mean, I guess the question becomes, for whom is it a problem? So, what you're telling me is this top journal is publishing junk. Okay? And everybody in the field knows it's junk because they're ignoring it. Okay? So their real audience is academics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And academics who will not even teach this junk to their students, because if they were teaching it to their students, then it would have impact because their students would take it out into the real world and use it. right?
Assuming their students are stupid enough to believe it, yes.
Okay. So even your students know this is junk.
Yes.
So this is a self-looking high-speed code?
Well, yeah, pretty much. It's a basically, and so the way we judge whether or not what the quality is we ask other researchers what they think about it. And so we create a loop where basically everybody is focused on satisfying other researchers. We don't ask the students, we don't ask practice. But the problem is that ultimately there is no objective way of measuring the quality of an article, particularly if it's not going to be tested in practice. It's like asking the question, what about the recipes in a cookbook? It's always going to be a matter of taste. And, I don't like 80% of the recipes in the joy of cooking, but there must be some people who like some of those recipes.
Well, who's funding all this research?
Our students and the state governments.
Okay. And so, like the students' situation.
And for engineer, you see, I'm limiting myself to business. We don't get much in the way of outside funding. So it's basically the tuition paid by our students and money coming from the state. That's
you're
not
getting federal grants.
We're not getting federal grants. We're not getting much in the way of local grants. And when we do get a local grant, they actually want us to do something useful. So it doesn't end up being published.
So it's a kind of a paradox for me, at least, that 92% of the people of the scientists know that all that is trash. Yes. Or not that way. The peer reviewing is not working. But who is at least attempting to improve it? Let alone improve it. But attempting to improve it.
But there are a lot of journals that have tried different peer reviewing processes specifically to improve it. I'm doing a different type of peer reviewing in my journals, but I couldn't care less if they're not rated very high, so that doesn't make a big difference to me. I actually had a faculty member from another university say, well, with your approach to peer reviewing, I will tell my students never to submit an article to your journal. And these are executive doctorates that he's talking about. That is, the problem is that we have a system that is built upon that is basically being run by people who have been successful getting through the system. And, we have to accept that.
There is one paper of 2 or 3 pages, short paper. So no one can say, I don't have time for that. With David Kaplan, highly cited, author in medicine. It's 2 or 3 pages. And he says that the problem in peer reviewing is that they are using the same mean to 2 different objectives. One objective of the peer reviewing is to improve the paper. And the other objective is to improve the decision to accept it or not. So he says, you have to have 2 processes. Not try to achieve both objectives with the same process of peer reviewing. You have to have 2. So it's an ethical problem, he said, for any author submitting a paper that he didn't get the paper before submitting it reviewed by his colleagues or his professors or his students. So he should do that before submission. It's an ethical problem because you cannot have in a double-blinded process, voluntary reviewers doing your job, which is to find someone to detect your errors. That's your job. It's not the job of the reviewer. That's your job. So, when I read that article, I found out that we at the IIIS, we had a meta-ethical problem that I didn't notice it until I read that paper. I read it in the 96. David Kaplan published it in the 95, as long as I know. The paper is 2 or 3 pages and is announced in all our conferences. Almost nobody read it. 2 or 3 pages. So what's our meta-ethical problem in the 206? Or up to the 06, because after that, the meta-ethical problem was that we didn't have the ethics of enforcing ethical behavior. So when I said that in Vienna, a friend of mine, even having lunch, they said, Nagib, you're gonna fail on that. Because you never studied for police. You cannot do that. No one can do that. Your career is not, you're a scientist, you're an engineer, you are whatever, but you're not the police. So this is the reason why we ended up with 2-tier methodology, reviewing methodology. We are enforcing the ethical behavior that an author should have, sending the paper before submission to be reviewed by his wife or her husband or his tutor or his student or her student or a colleague or a date. Okay? So we are getting sure that he does that. And this is why we ask for non-anonymous review by author suggested by the author. If the author had an ethical way of doing things, he wouldn't care to write down the name of the people who already reviewed it. If not, well, people know him how to review. So, in this way, you have responsible people because their name is over there. So, one of the problems of the double-blind reviewing, that the name would never appear, and then anyone can do whatever he wants, because they did that to us in the 205. And they will never could do it again because of this methodology that has not just an ethical perspective, but a meta-ethical one. The ethics to enforce ethics, behavior from the authors. So it's double tier that the paper to be accepted got to be accepted by both kinds of review, the non-anonymous and the traditional double-blind. So Jeremy Horn, he was former president of one of the largest society of the fourth part, the southeast of the largest scientific society, told me that that's the best methodology that he saw, and he tried to convince the AAAS to apply this methodology because it's working. No one would care, he told me. No one would care. And we have the experience from the 206 up to the present that it improved the paper and it improve our decisions by different channels, as recommended in a short article by David Kaplan. So all what I did is to apply what David Kaplan recommended to fix peer review, and the title of the article is a short article, is How to Fix Peer Review. So there is at least one person who attempted to fix that, but no one is listening to him. So now, give me your usual explanation.
The usual explanation is that the purpose of peer review at these big journals is not to improve things. That's maybe a side benefit. The purpose of peer reviewing is to thumbs up or thumbs down an article. In informing science, our institute, we have a different process, but it's somewhat similar. We require our editors to give the thumbs up and thumbs down after the initial set of reviews, and then provide specific guidance to the author on what needs to be done in order to get the paper, finally published. So we say, okay, you're accepted, provided you do the following things, and the author can choose to do those or not, as opposed to entering an endless cycle of reviews and re-reviews and so forth, because most of your peer reviewers are more interested in their role as gatekeeper than they are in their role of actually trying to improve the paper. And
you see? So do you see now why David Kaplan is right when he says that the author, the ethics of the author, should, before sending the paper, he should review it by his colleagues or at least his students. By the way, students are better reviewers than professors. But the difference is a large one. And young professor, instructor are a lot better than seniors. And when you find a senior that he's making a good review, most of the time, not all the time, he's asking his student to do the review.
But at least at our university, it would be very, very rare for a professor to send out an article to a journal without having
a journal. How about the conference?
For a conference, ultimately, I think the purpose of a conference is to get reviews and suggestions on how to improve from the audience. The conference, you're getting another set of reviews.
Is there here anyone from computer science? You accept that?
Well, alas, in computer science, the field changes so quickly that if you waited for journal article publication, your research would be obsolete before it got published in a journal.
Right.
So most organizations treat high quality conferences like journal.
And you also get credit for grants, like from the National Science Foundation and so forth, will count heavily towards things like promotion and tenure. And in fact, that's something I've had to explain to our faculty, that computer science is different because we're in an information systems department, but some of our folks come from computer science backgrounds, and we have to explain to promotion and tenure committees that, look, the conferences are different. But you're right, in the case of the computer science conferences, they're much more competitive, much more, much harder to get into, and they're given a lot more credit.
But there is a root problem, intellectual problem here. We are confusing the means with the end. A conference has a different objective than a journal. So computer science cannot take the conferences as journals as they want.
Well, except
this is according to a logic of mean, end and mean. this is an intellectual corruption.
But you know
They are corrupting the meaning of the conferences. Conferences are not journal. They cannot corrupt that meaning. You cannot take a hammer to kill someone. The hammer is for something different.
Well,
This is corruption.
That's your opinion.
No, it's not my opinion. It's according to the logic of end and means. I am applying logic. I'm not giving opinion.
No, I think you're giving opinion. I think
No, it's not opinion, it's logic.
No, because I would argue that in computer science.
What's the end of the conference that you said before? What is the objective of a conference?
In computer science, the objective.
No. Remove computer science. What's the objective of a conference?
Well, if it's not in computer science, it's a good way of getting feedback. But in computer science, it is a principal way of diffusing information, and when you cite articles in computer science, most of the time they're going to be conference articles, whereas if you cite articles in business, most of the time they're going to be journals articles. So it's a different channel of communication. It's a different informing channel.
They should make their own conferences and not try to change the objective of all the conferences.
They do.
They do.
Absolutely.
They do.
Need that. I didn't
You see now why I
single line of code. Did I? Never. I talk about history of natural sciences, but not of coding. I could do that, but I think I will. Well, I don't know what you think about that. It is not necessary because the conference has another purpose. But this is
yes.
This is what we have to accept.
Yes.
But I need the other conference.
So they want all the other disciplines to fit their objective. And if you don't do that, you are invading. That was the word that was used with me. You are invading their territory. I told them, it's the contrary. You are invading the territory of all other disciplines, trying to impose what conference should be and should not be. It's the other way around. You are projecting yourself when you are telling me that. You see why in the first day that I throw an arrow in the obscurity, and I said that I think that the next intellectual monster is going to be coming from the computer science. It's interdisciplinary research. Yeah. Thank you so very much.